had lots. So.
Okay, I want to go ahead and call to order this regular meeting of the City of Leavenworth Planning Commission. We do have a quorum. Commissioners have received copies of the minutes from the January 7th meeting. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be made to the minutes? Okay, if not, I'll go ahead and take a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All,
I'll make a motion that we accept the January minutes.
I think we have the motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. First item is 219-02 SUB, Richard Warren School Final Plat. Could we have the staff report, please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you said, this is a final plat request for the Richard Warren Middle School. The applicant is basically requesting the final plat in order to consolidate multiple lots that are owned by the school district into one lot. If you want to look up here on the screen, the largest lot that the school owns is where the school is currently located. They also own the lot just to the north of it. And then there's sort of an empty right-of-way for Meadow Lane, and the school district also owns this lot to the north of that. So they will be combining all three of those lots into one lot. The plat also includes this portion of Meadow Lane. They currently have an application in to vacate that. Vacation of right-of-way is approved through the City Commission, so that's scheduled to be heard by the Commission on February 12th, which is next Tuesday. So any approval of this plat would be contingent upon the City Commission approving the vacation of that right-of-way. The district is currently planning for an addition to the middle school. I think they may have already started it. They can elaborate on that a little bit, just to the north of the existing building. So again, this plat is just to kind of consolidate all the lots owned by the district at this site into one lot. So if you have any questions, I can answer them, and the applicant and the engineer are here as well.
Thank you. Any questions for the staff?
Yes, Julie, on the, this, okay, will the city maintain or retain an easement under Meadow Lane where it used to, where they're intending to vacate it? Are there utilities or anything in there where the city will want to maintain an easement through there?
Any easements have been accounted for and shown on the plat, and the engineer can elaborate on that a little bit. I know they have worked with the water department a little bit, but as far as the actual right-of-way, no specific easement will be maintained for that, just the utilities.
Okay. And the tract that's designated as Tract A that's south of the right-of-way, what was that tract originally designated for?
I'm not sure. Matt Dedeke, who's with the school district, who can maybe elaborate on what
It's not a drainage easement or drainage
No.
tract?
No.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I'm not sure at what point the district may have acquired that.
If the applicants have anything they'd like to add to this? If so, please come up to the podium. And if you could give us your name and where you live.
Figure out the microphone. Good evening, Matt Dedeke. I'm the Director of Facilities for Leavenworth Public Schools. As Ms. Hurley said, we have started the process of adding a building to the north of our current middle school. Unfortunately, with the weather, it's a little bit delayed, but in preparation for this, we started looking at our boundary, our property and platting, and we did have a few loose parcels to the north of Meadow Lane. The tracks, how we had them, I think when we purchased this property almost 20 years ago, it was probably consistent of several smaller pieces, and that's how we ended up with the three plats north of Meadow Lane. What we're asking for your consideration is to allow this final plat, which would include the vacancy of Meadow Lane, and allow us to join it all under that same 3501 New Lawrence Road address, and kind of clean up a little bit of paperwork on our side for just reimbursements from the state and those type of things that would apply to a school district when we have a building there. Additionally, with the if the vacancy is approved by the city, The tree line that sits close to the new building will actually be very, very close to our parking lot. And with school safety in mind, it would give us the ability to maintain that tree line, keep the undergrowth under control, and even utilize it for some of our science classes.
Any questions for Mr. Dedeke? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any discussion or issues from the commissioners?
No.
Okay, we have three options. We can approve the final plat, we can deny the final plat, or we can table the issue for additional information. If somebody'd like to make a motion, if you move to approve the final plat, please include in your motion that the approval will be contingent upon the vacation approval by the city commission. Would somebody like to make a motion at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed final plat for the 2019-02-SUB for Warren Middle School to, based upon the final approval of the City Council.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? And the motion, of course, is based on the findings of facts and the information presented here tonight. We have a motion. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Unanimous? Thank you. Second item is on text amendments. This will be a public hearing. And basically, the way we handle public hearings is we have the staff present their report. We then ask questions of the staff or the applicant, if there's an applicant here. We would then open a public hearing. The members would be invited to speak at the podium, and they'd be asked to direct their questions to us on the commission. Any that we can't answer, we would then refer to the staff or to the applicant if there was one present. Following that, the public hearing will be closed, and we'll discuss and come to a decision. In this case, it'll be whether approving, or recommending approval, or recommending disapproval for any or all of the text amendments to the City Commission. And the staff report, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you'll recall, the Planning Commission did review these proposed text amendments back in December, and so this is just finalizing those. We've got the language written into the regulations for your review, and then to hold the public hearing if anybody has any comments. So I'll just run through the proposed changes that we have this time. The first one is in section 3. It was just one word was missing for applicability and exemptions. It's section 3.02, subsection B1. The language should read, the division of land into parcels or tracts of not more than 5 acres. And those would be exempt from sort of the more strenuous platting requirements. The second addition is in section 4.04. It's in our use standards. And this is adding a provision for accessory dwelling units in residential areas. This is a request that we've had come up multiple times from residential property owners who maybe have an existing accessory structure on their lot or want to construct one and put a dwelling unit in those for either rental purposes or an aging parent or an adult child, something like that. A lot of cities do have provisions for those. We currently do not, so this was adding language to allow for that. And so just briefly to go over what I did add, I looked at some other cities and what language they have and what seems to work, and so that's where I came up with this. So these would be, the accessory dwelling units would be allowed in any residential district with issuance of a special use permit. So if someone was wanting to do that, that would require approval of this board, so a little bit more oversight, not just any lot could have one just freely. So the conditions would be that it would be compatible with the design of the principal dwelling unit, that it would respect the general building scale and placement of structures in the neighborhood, that it would not have a separate driveway entrance from the streets to which the property is adjacent. So a lot of times you'll see these, there's like a carriage house sitting behind the main structure, and they share the same driveway off the street, and it would kind of extend past the main house to that accessory unit is what you typically see. That they shall be 900 square feet or smaller in size, not to exceed 33% of the floor area of the principal dwelling unit. And the 900 square feet comes from our current requirement for a size of a detached garage, so we just kept that consistent across the board. The fifth is that either the principal dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit must be occupied by the owner of the premises. So you're not going to end up with two separate units on a lot that are potentially rented out. That it shall be subject to all applicable residential building codes. So any accessory unit that they're putting in is going to have to meet those same single-family residential building codes that a typical house would. And that lots containing accessory dwelling units shall contain a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces exclusive of garage space, so that we're not having 2 separate dwelling units on a lot with no off-street parking, and then you're going to have multiple family units parking on a street and clogging that up. So if you have any questions about that, or maybe additions or changes.
I guess the only question I'd have is on the, I mean, and it makes sense where we say it should be compatible with the design of the principal dwelling unit, but that's not something we usually look at. So how would we do that?
On something like this, if someone was applying to build one of these on their lot, we would expect for them to bring building elevations when they would apply for their special use permit, so that we could sort of make a subjective decision on that to make sure that it's not, you know, have a nice Victorian house, and they're gonna put up a Morton building out back to use as their accessory dwelling unit. So the goal is really to have it blend in with the character of the neighborhood, and so, again, that would be subject to review when they came in for their special use permit by this board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's no other questions on that one. The next is in the same section, the use standards, and this actually came up from the city commission. The city clerk was just reviewing city ordinances and how the city handles massage establishments and updating that language. And so the city commission in the ordinances changed the language regarding massage therapy establishments, and basically referred it back to the development regulations, so we needed to get that language in here. So basically, we just added the language stating that massage therapy establishments as a home occupation may be allowed with issuance of a special use permit. Such establishments are subject to all requirements of home occupations as provided in these regulations, as well as all requirements for massage establishments as provided in the City of Leavenworth Code of Ordinances. So just getting that in compliance with what the city commission has already put into their codes. Okay, the next is in the same subsection, 4.0 in the use standards. Previously, it stated that a variance in size for a detached garage would need to be approved through the board, or through a special use permit. That should actually be approved through the Board of Zoning Appeals. That's the correct board to approve a variance in the size of a detached structure. So we just cleaned up that language. The next section is in our sign chapter, section 8.04. And these are signs exempt from a sign permit. We just added decorative light pole banners, which may not include any business or advertising information. The question we get on these is somewhere like if Walmart wanted to put up, Happy Holidays banners hanging on their light poles. We just didn't have that type of banner specifically addressed in the regulations. And so we've been allowing those without permit, but just wanted to formalize that. They couldn't be advertising a sale or the business name or anything like that, but just sort of a general decorative light pole banner would be allowed. Okay, the next section is still in the sign chapter. It's signs permitted in all residential districts. We did make allowance for neighborhood identification signs, but we did not have any sort of size requirements on those. No way to limit that if someone came in and applied for one. So again, I took a look at what some other cities have as far as their size requirements, and then just kind of referred back to what we allow in other areas. And so came up with, neighborhoods can have one per neighborhood entrance, maximum height of 8 feet, and a maximum area of 50 square feet. So that's what would be allowed for a neighborhood identification sign. And that's pretty standard with cities for their neighborhood identification signs. The next is Article 10 in the supplemental standards regarding solar energy. We've been having more and more requests for solar energy systems to be installed on residential properties. And previously, we had language in here that required anyone installing a solar collection system of over 500 square feet to get a special use permit. And what we found is that for many homes, 500 square feet is just not enough. 500 square feet of collection surface is just not enough to meet the needs to provide power to their home. And so we were having a number come through over 500 square feet. And so taking a look around at what other cities have done, I actually didn't find any cities that required any sort of special use permits for roof-mounted solar collection systems. So if you'll notice in the language, we've got two different types of systems. We've got a solar array, which is a ground-mounted solar panel system, and then a solar collection system, which is the roof-mounted. So we already had language in here that for the solar array, the ground-mounted, that they're going to be limited to 600 square feet, and they have to meet certain setback standards. But then I just removed the language requiring a special use permit for a solar collection system of over 500 square feet. And again, that's the roof-mounted system. So that's going to be anything on a roof that's not affecting, yard space or setbacks or anything like that. And so that's really keeping consistent with what other cities have moved to. And again, like I said, I didn't find any cities that have a requirement for special use permit for any sort of roof-mounted systems.
Julie, a point of discussion on that
Yeah.
for the commission. I would like to visit about this line about being 1/2 of the footprint of the principal building rather than 50% of the roof area of the building.
What section specifically are you in?
That same one you're on, but we talk about that the solar array should not be more than 50% of the building footprint. Correct? On that 10.01B1C, it's
1C, okay.
highlighted.
Fourth one.
Right, where we
Yeah.
talk about the size of the accessory array shall not exceed 1/2 of the footprint of the principal structure. So that's the floor plan of the building, but it doesn't relate to the roof area. So I'm wondering if it should relate to the roof area, because a 1-story building is going to need a smaller solar system than a
Right.
3-story building because of the electrical demand. So, but it could still have the same footprint as a 1-story building.
Yeah, and again, the
So that's just
solar
what I
array is
thought.
that ground-mounted one. So I just kind of highlighted that to show you what we already had in there. That's, the highlighted portion is not actually changing.
Oh, okay.
And so, yeah, the solar array that's talking about is the ground-mounted one.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, you're
I'm
fine.
sorry.
It's like I was telling Kamala, I confused myself when I was going through this, and
Yeah.
I deleted half of it because I thought we had repeated it, and I realized, no, it's two different things we're talking about. So yeah, the solar array,
Is-
that 50% is the ground-mounted.
Okay.
So if you were doing an array in your backyard, it would be limited to 50% of the footprint of the house.
So, sorry, maybe I'm having a brain cramp here, but the part about the roof piece of it then is where?
That's, so if you look at the bottom, the highlighted portion is on page 10-1. And the solar collection system, which is the roof mounted, is on 10-2.
Okay. So there it doesn't give a square footage, it just says it can't, it just gives a perimeter of.
Yes,
Should not exceed more than 5 feet above the roof line.
yes.
Et cetera, et
So you
cetera.
could
Okay.
theoretically cover your entire roof
Okay.
with solar panels
Good.
if you wanted or needed that for your residents. But if you're gonna put them on the ground
Then there's.
and
the-
you're placing that in your yard, then you're gonna have that restriction on how large that field can be.
Perfect, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Like I said, I kept confusing myself reading it too, so. Does anybody else have any
We
questions
were all
on it?
confused, but only one person was.
Well, I'm glad somebody spoke up.
I thought it was perfectly okay.
Sherry had it.
Two blondes think alike.
Does everybody
Trust
on the same page?
Yes.
Okay, if not, I'll explain, I can try.
Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, this one, like, I had to go over a few times to make sure I was conveying what we were intending. Okay, and then, the next is in Article 12 and the definitions. Just going through it, realized we had a category for indoor commercial recreation or entertainment. So that heading was listed, but there was no definition attached to it, so just added, just a basic definition. Any facility for recreation, which is indoors and commercial in nature, so, just to get that cleaned up.
Would that include like a horse arena or something like that?
Something like that, or paintball, or, an indoor rock climbing, just sort of any indoor recreation, could be a lot of different things. And then the last is just in the use table. Had a few modifications. The live, work dwellings under residential uses. Those should be allowed previously they were only allowed in the RMX district, the residential mixed use. And those mixed use, needed to be allowed in some other districts, including the central business district, which allows for a mix of uses in buildings. And then, the thought was that in a neighborhood business district, that's probably also an allowable, or an allowable use to have in that district as well. So broadened that a little bit. The next is, we added a use type for event venues. We've had a few inquiries about those types of places, like a wedding reception venue, something like that, and we just didn't have a slot in here for it. So just made that an allowable use in any commercial district, that fits in with other types of uses that are allowed in commercial districts. The next is to allow private solar collection systems as an allowed use in all districts. And again, this would be a private property owner, a homeowner, or a business owner, being allowed to install a solar collection system just for their own property's use. That was a little bit restricted before, so now that's gonna be allowed in any district. Then similar, we expanded the areas that a commercial solar collection system or a commercial wind energy system could be permitted. And those are gonna require a special use permit wherever they go in. But the thinking was that, previously they'd only been allowed for with a special use permit in commercial districts. The thinking is that there may be, a large 50-acre residential parcel somewhere in town that something like this would be appropriate. So just, allow them to come in for a special use permit to possibly get that approval instead of just flat out, disallowing it. So as alternative energy sources are becoming more prevalent, just sort of, kind of keep up with the times and allow for those as they may come in. And then just the final one, we moved the category of athletic facilities from commercial services to recreation and entertainment subsection. And that was more just for housekeeping on our end. We've had it come up a few times and we can't find it. And then a few hours later, we find it in the section that we weren't looking in. So it just seemed to fit better in the recreation and entertainment subsection. So if you have any questions that we haven't covered, I can answer those. If not, the city commission is gonna be taking a first look at these at their study session tomorrow night. And then they will have to adopt them through ordinance, so that'll be scheduled for a regular city commission, here after they take a look at their study session.
I guess a question I would have is on the commercial, either wind energy or solar. I mean, by definition, that means that the individual that owns this would be selling the energy.
Yeah, so that would be like a utility company. If Westar wanted to put in a wind energy field, and they had a plot of land that they were looking to do that on, they could come in for a special use permit, and staff would review it, planning commission would have the chance to review it. When something's just an allowed by right use, they can just come in and do it without a whole lot of review, so just giving us the opportunity to take a little bit closer look at those.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just wondering, is it, and I understand where it might make sense for a, R-125 to come in for a special use if it's, an undeveloped area of the city, but on the smaller zoned areas, the R-16s, is that really something we want to give them an opportunity to come in and
And that's
fight over
for
that?
the planning commission and city commission to decide. Staff's thinking was that, we're not familiar off the top of our heads with every single parcel of ground in the city. So there may be a situation where they've got an R-16 zoned lot that's 10 acres in size that's already existing, that they would want to put in a small solar collection field that might end up being acceptable. So just allowing them to come in for a special use permit isn't giving them carte blanche to put in whatever they want, but it is giving us the chance to look and say, maybe this will work, and just kind of opening that up for some more alternatives.
So another question to piggyback with that, Julie. So just to clarify, on the
Sure.
private solar collection system, we're allowing it in non-residential with a permit as permissible.
Yes.
So that would include private companies that would want to put solar on their
Yes.
roofs, like in the industrial park or something.
Yeah,
They could
correct.
come
So
in.
if Cereal Ingredients wanted to put in a solar collection system on their roof, or a ground mounted, they would have to meet our requirements, but they would have the opportunity to do that for their business.
Without a special use
Yeah,
permit.
they wouldn't be selling the energy to their neighbors, but it would be for their own personal use.
Okay. And we're viewing on the residential side, when they're leasing those from a company, even though it's still private, we're still considering those a private facility.
Yeah, that
use
would
because
still
the
be
homeowner-
private,
Okay.
right, because it's for their use only, and they're
They're not
leasing
selling it
maybe
to
right.
others,
They're not
okay.
selling to their neighbors or anything like that.
Any other questions for the staff on the changes? Okay, well, at this point,
Good
I'll go
job,
ahead and
Julie.
open up the public hearing. Does anybody want to speak? Okay,
Large crowd tonight.
It's all running in.
I'll go. I'll run down.
then we will close the
Oh.
public.
Oh, wait, there it is. Say something.
Steve has something to say.
State your name.
And address.
And I agree, a nice job on these, and of course, you had gone over these with us earlier,
Yep.
so I don't think there were any real surprises here for anybody. Is there any discussion or concerns as far as the proposed changes?
No.
Okay, we have the option of recommending approval of to the city commission of the changes to the development regulation, or disapproval. I'll take a motion at this time.
I motion to approve the proposed text amendments for final action by the city commission.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor signify by raising your right hand. Opposed? Unanimous? The next item we have is the election of officers. By our bylaws, we have a chair and a vice chair. We also have a secretary, but that is done admirably by the city staff. The chair and the vice chair serve for a one-year period of time. And normally the way we've done this in the past is we accept nominations. If the nomination is seconded, that individual is up for the position. When all the nominations are in, we vote initially for the chair, then we go through the same process for the vice chair. So at this point, I'll go ahead and take nominations for the chair.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead. Go
Okay,
first.
no, I was just going to say nominate Jay Byrne for chairman. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We have a chair, all right, we have a motion. Do we have a second of that nomination? Okay, so that dies. Do we have another nomination?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Mrs. Sherry Hines Whitson.
Oh, there you go. There we go.
We have a nomination. Do we have a second of the nomination?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a nomination.
James
And a
wants
second.
somebody to second it. With all due respect.
It was going to be seconded.
Maybe I'll sit here and keep my mouth shut and hope somebody nominates me.
Do we have any other nominations? Okay, then we will close the nominations at this time. All in favor of Sherry, signify by raising your right hand.
Oh, I'll vote for myself.
6-0. And we'll now go ahead and accept nominations for the vice chair.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Mrs. Kamala Glenhard for that position.
Thank you. We have a nomination. Do we have a second of the nomination?
I'll second it.
We do have a second.
Girl power.
Yeah.
Do we have any additional nominations? Okay, all in favor of Kamala serving as the vice chair, please signify by raising your right hand. Unanimous.
She moved herself, so she must want it.
This is crazy. Yeah.
I think John just didn't want to get nominated.
Go fast and go quick.
Your John, 1 year goes really fast.
Don't tell me, I've been on this for what, 6 months?
Does the staff have anything else for us tonight?
Nope, just to let you know, we do not have any applications for next month, so we will not have a March planning commission meeting.
Okay.
Spring break.
Yeah.
The Immaculata plan, was it submitted to, I believe the council looked at it once, but I'm
Yes,
unsure if they approved it or not.
They voted to approve it. Rezonings are approved by ordinance, so the commission has to do 2 readings of that ordinance. And so they're scheduled to do their second reading on the 12th, which is next Tuesday, so that will be the final approval of that rezoning.
Okay.
Anything else from the commissioners? Okay, if not, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.